A plot twist can either make or break a movie in a single moment. A great twist will enrich a film's themes and leave viewers blown away by the ingenuity of it all, while a poor twist will feel cheap, unearned, and like nothing more than a lazy attempt to shock the audience. But whether good or bad, plot twists have a tendency to stick in viewers' minds, especially those that go the extra mile to get really weird, defy expectations, and maybe even leave the audience completely traumatized. The likes of Psycho and The Sixth Sense didn't make the cut because they're just so familiar in 2021, but these movies nevertheless dared to take a hard swing for the fences no matter how it all turned out. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 8 totally WTF horror movie plot twists. Number 8. Sam is a serial killer, The Mortuary Collection. This terrific recent horror anthology lures audiences into a false sense of security before letting loose with a wildly unexpected final reveal. The Mortuary Collection's narrative sees a young woman, Sam, visiting Raven's End Mortuary to inquire about the Help Wanted sign. There she meets mortician Montgomery Dark, who regales her with a number of morbid stories before she offers up one of her own. The story concludes by revealing that Sam is not actually Sam at all, but a child murderer and cannibal named Charlotte Gibbons, aka the Tooth Fairy Killer. Back in the present, she's come to the mortuary to retrieve the tooth of the child she most recently murdered, who Dark has been preparing for burial. Sam stabs Dark only to be met by the charred spirits of the children she murdered, who promptly rip her apart. Dark then sews her body back together and switches out her blood with embalming fluid, installing her as the new mortician and apparently allowing him to finally leave the mortuary. However, upon exiting, Dark himself explodes into dust. In the final scene, Sam has fully taken up the mortician's mantle, while speaking to a young boy she's already made, dinner plans for. Horror anthologies have a tendency to be uneven, but the Mortuary Collection backs up its consistent series of stories with a shocking narrative sting that savagely ties the whole thing together. Number 7. Jaime stabs Darlene, Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers. Halloween 4 may not be a very good movie, if we're being kind, but it does feature one of the series' boldest and most memorable endings. After Michael Myers is attacked by a lynch mob and buried in a mine shaft, all seems to be back to normal, as Michael's young niece Jamie is reunited with her foster parents. But in a hugely unexpected twist, the final scene sees Jamie's foster mother Darlene stabbed while running a bath for Jamie, before the culprit is revealed to be Jamie herself, brandishing a pair of scissors just as Michael did in the first Halloween. The obvious implication is that Jamie has inherited her uncle's murderous instincts, though this was sadly jettisoned in the next sequel, where Darlene is revealed to have survived and Jamie is admitted to a children's clinic for her psychological issues. Oh, and she develops a telepathic link with Michael, because of course she does. Still, for a moment there, this twist ending posited an interesting gear shift for the series, albeit one which was ultimately nothing more than a hollow, desperate attempt to lure fans back for the next movie. Number 6. John is murdered by a dwarf serial killer. Don't Look Now. Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now is one of the greatest horror films ever made. Its discomfortingly intimate performances from Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie combine with dizzyingly non-linear editing to prevent viewers from piecing together its savage twist ending. Sutherland and Christie play John and Laura Baxter, a couple who recently lost their young daughter in a drowning accident. John's work sees the pair travel to Venice, where soon enough John begins singing strange visions of what appears to be his daughter running around the city in her distinctive red coat. He also sees visions of a funeral procession led by Julie while she's supposed to have left the country, warnings of his life being in danger, and reports of a serial killer terrorizing Venice. In the film's terrifying climax, John once again encounters the figure in the red coat, following them to discover they are in fact not his daughter, but a dwarf, who is also the serial killer reported in the news. The dwarf cuts his throat, and John dies just as he realizes that he's been experiencing premonitions of his own death throughout the movie. It's nothing short of mind-blowing and absolutely brilliant. Number 5. Angela is actually Peter and the killer, Sleepaway Camp. What would otherwise be a shameless Friday the 13th knockoff remains iconic today thanks to its mind-melting final killer reveal. The big twist announces that the shy, unassuming Angela is not only the killer, but also actually a boy, standing up to reveal a male anatomy, genitals and all, to survivors Susie and Ronnie. Though an opening prologue suggests that Angela's brother Peter was killed in a speedboat accident when they were only children, the twist reveals that Angela was actually the one who died, and the kid's deranged Aunt Martha forced forced Peter to dress as a girl and assume Angela's identity. While the twist leads to some problematic trans representation, as a piece of storytelling, it's shocked audiences for decades, if only for how wildly unexpected it was. Plus, who could ever forget Angela holding their mouth wide open and growling like a bear in the film's final shot? Haunting. Number 4. The director is the killer. The Last Broadcast. Released before The Blair Witch Project, though largely forgotten, The Last Broadcast is a found-footage mockumentary film depicting the murders of a reality TV crew who ventured out into New Jersey's Pine Barrens in pursuit of the mythic Jersey Devil. The only surviving member of the crew is ultimately convicted of their murder, though dies in prison under mysterious circumstances. Near the end of the film, the documentary's director David Lee receives a videotape depicting the murders, which he hires a video engineer to sift through. At that moment, the killer's face comes into focus, and it's David himself. The perspective then abruptly shifts to third person, where David murders the engineer and dumps her body in the woods, revealing David to be a serial killer moonlighting as a documentarian. The twist doesn't really hold up to scrutiny at all, though given that audiences were surely expecting some sort of blurry, out-of-focus glimpse of the Jersey Devil, it was certainly a surprising swinging for the fences final twist, logic be damned. Number 3. Edward is a human puppet. Dead silence. If you thought the ending to Saw was crazy, James Wan well and truly one-upped himself with his follow-up, Dead Silence. The film revolves around protagonist Jamie Ashen, who returns to his sleepy hometown to investigate his wife's gruesome and mysterious death. The big, howling, ridiculous twist is that Jamie's wheelchair-bound father, Edward, who's said to have suffered a stroke, has actually been dead for the entire movie. In fact, his body's been hollowed out and turned into a life-sized puppet. His wife Ella had been puppeteering Edward with a rod installed in his body cavity, while throwing her voice to also sound like him. Meanwhile, if that wasn't complicated enough, Ella herself is possessed by the spirit of a vengeful ventriloquist, Mary Shaw, who then kills Jamie in the film's final scene. It's a boatload of insanity, and though the film as a whole isn't a slam dunk, its totally balmy twist ending is absolutely impossible to forget almost 15 years later. Number 2. Marie was the killer all along. High Tension. For almost the entirety of its runtime, High Tension is a visceral, blisteringly intense slasher film, in which two friends, Marie and Alex, find themselves fleeing from a serial killer. The film is jam-packed with brutal violence and scene after scene of uneasy suspense, yet fumbles the ball at the final hurdle with its twist ending. Here it's revealed that the killer is actually Marie herself, who's criminally insane and madly, murderously in love with Alex. Unfortunately, the twist basically causes the movie to collapse in on itself when viewers consider the non-logic of everything they just watched, particularly some of the immense feats of strength the killer commits, which Marie herself would surely be incapable of. But even if you accept that what we're seeing is from Marie's own unreliable perspective, why do we also see objective scenes of the killer where neither Marie nor Alex are present? It makes no damn sense at all, ending the film on a cheap cop-out that's nevertheless totally unforgettable in its misguided absurdity. Number 1. The heroes get digested. The Borderlands. And now onto a real cult favorite with 2013's hidden gem, The Borderlands, which offers up one of the most imaginative and unexpected twist endings from any recent entry into the genre. The found footage film follows a team of investigators who've been sent by the Vatican to investigate reports of paranormal activity in a rural Devon church. For much of the movie, the men remain skeptical of any credible supernatural happenings, though by the film's end, Brother Deacon and tech expert Gray find out firsthand what it's like to be in the belly of the beast. After they discover a hidden area of the church which suggests evidence of child sacrifices in the name of a pagan deity, Deacon and Gray end up crawling down a narrow passageway. When it becomes too tight, they attempt to turn back, only to find their entrance blocked. At this moment, the tunnel starts to move, and the men see their skin beginning to burn, implying they've somehow entered the digestive tract of the pagan deity and are now being devoured alive. Given the movie's evidently low budget, this was a brilliantly creative way to depict a heightened concept with practically no money. That's it for this list, but do let me know down in the comments which horror movie plot twists are your favorite. I've been Jess for What Culture. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and you can come say hi to me on my Twitter where I'm @JessMcDonald, but be sure to stick around with us here for plenty more content.